Hi everyone, my name is Monique.
And I'm Naveen from Before You Play.
And welcome to our semi-Halloween theme Let's Talk Board Games.
This is definitely the Halloween theme, Monique.
Yes,
this
it's just not decorated.
Not decorated. Well, we have a pumpkin right there.
We do.
There it is. Nice plastic one. We are going to be talking about a couple Halloween-ish, Halloween-adjacent themed board games.
Halloween adjacent.
So-
It's not. They're not all spooky.
No.
One of them is pretty spooky if you really think about the theme.
Sure.
It's really spooky.
Yeah.
But the other ones are more, I suppose, just Halloween fantasy theme.
We're
They're
making
fantasy
it work
themed. Yes.
around this holiday.
And so today we're going to be talking about 4 different games, but we would also love to hear what games you are playing around the Halloween season, or what games do you typically bring out? I know some people bring out some games every year, right? When it's October.
We like to do Dead of Winter. It's
Yes.
been about a year since the last time we played it.
Yeah, we did. We played it last year, right?
The Banishing is one that I really enjoy playing. That is a co-op card game. What else do we play?
The Alchemist.
Alchemist, there you
is,
go, yeah.
it's not spooky. It has, it's just about being an
got that
alchemist.
feeling.
But for some reason, I think it's because the ingredients are like frog, right?
Like the
There's a frog in
talon,
there.
the talon leg, and like
Yeah.
the mushroom branch or
It
something. I don't
seems
remember. Something
witch-like.
like that.
So please let us know if you'll be doing any Halloween gaming, and let us know what your favorite titles are, I guess, in the comments down below.
All right, so let's just jump straight into the games. We do have to note that all 4 of these games we're going to talk about were review copies that we received at some point in time. First one we want to talk about is a recent one that we've been playing. This is a game called Toil and Troubles.
Yes.
Now this comes to us from Grandpa Beck's Games, and it is a small card game that has push-your-luck elements.
Yes, so if you're not familiar with Grandpa Beck's Games, they are a publisher that publishes a lot of these small box, typically card games.
About the size, yeah.
Probably our favorite title of all of them is one called Skull King. This is a trick-taking game. I actually have it right here. How
Yes.
convenient.
Definitely.
This is Skull King. This is the one that kind of put Grandpa Beck's games on our radar. Their games range quite a bit in terms of style and mechanics, as well as complexity. This is probably their most complex game, I would say.
From the ones we
But-
played, yeah.
Yeah, but this one, Toil and Troubles, is their newest one, I think, for the season. This is definitely a family weight style card game for 2 to 6 players, and there's a lot of push your luck. Basically, in this game, you're trying to score the most amount of magic points by essentially set collecting. On your turn, you're going to draw cards from the deck and place them into the Enchanted Forest. Now, the deck of cards is comprised of 2 main types of cards. You'll see talismans that have a numerical value. I believe they're numbered 1 through 5.
1 through 5.
And you also have Master Magician cards, which will provide you with some sort of action whenever you take it. Now, all the cards come in either green, blue, or red. And so when you draw a card and place it into the Enchanted Forest, you have to follow some placement rules. And that's where the push your luck element comes into play. The Enchanted Forest can only have at most 3 rows. In addition, no 2 colors can be next to each other, and they have to be in ascending numerical order.
Right, so they can be next to each other technically in separate rows, but in the same row,
Yeah.
you cannot have 2 colors matching or 2 of the same numbers matching.
Right, and they have to be an ascending numerical value. And so if I were to draw maybe a red 2, and I draw another red card, then I would be forced to play that second card to a new row.
Right.
And so every time you place a card into the forest, you're going to decide, do I want to keep drawing or do I want to just stop? And if you decide to stop, then you as the active player get to choose one of those rows and take all of the cards in it. Afterwards, everybody else gets to draw 1 card from the forest. If you continue to push and you bust because you end up drawing a card that you cannot legally place into the forest, you don't get to take any cards,
get nothing.
but all of your opponents still get to take 1. And so your goal is to collect either 4 of the same number or a set of 1 through 5. And if you're able to do so, then you can turn in that set and immediately flip over 1 card. And at the end of the game, it's going to score you 10 points. The significance of that, besides the fact that it scores you 10 points, is those cards cannot be stolen. Because if you take any cards from the Enchanted Forest that are those Master Magicians, then they will grant you a specific action. And a lot of those actions will either force other players to discard a card from in front of them, or you can steal a card from somebody else.
Or if you take a card, there's a card called Poison. So if, like, let's say there's a row and you get to choose, and in that row, there's many cards that you really like, and that Poison card happens to be in there because you must take everything, then Poison means you must discard one of your cards that you have. So
Right.
maybe you're saying, okay, that's fine. I'll take 1 Poison. I'm willing to lose 1 card because I'm gaining all these other ones.
Right.
Then there's also a summon card where if Monique has something in her pile that I really like, then I can play I can use the summon card to take one of her cards and place it for myself.
Yes.
And things like that.
So there is a bit of take that. But it is also strategic because there's another card called the Cloak card. When drawn from the deck, you actually cover up one of the cards in the Enchanted Forest. And so using the Cloak card, you can actually you can break the rules essentially
Yeah, so you
because
can
it
have,
hides the card that's in the forest.
Yeah, you can have like two colors next to each other.
Mm-hmm.
If one of them is cloaked, then therefore, you don't see that same color.
Right.
Or also the same number.
And that's essentially the whole game. It's very simple, very light. This is definitely meant for, those situations where you're just playing a light card game with some push your luck and around the season.
Yeah, definitely. Like if you're getting together with family and maybe they're not into heavy board games or even medium weight board games and you just want to teach a quick game, this one plays in about 20 to 30 minutes and it plays up to 6 players. So that push your luck element, it kind of moves fast. In higher player counts, you go through the deck multiple times. In lower player counts, you just go through the deck once and that signals the end of the game.
Right.
So for us, if we're just playing just the two of us, this is not one of those games that we would really kind of gravitate towards because we're not really big on push your luck and then especially the take that element of it. So I could see this more with family, people who are not really gamers. You just kind of want to get something in and out in a nice like little 20-minute game.
Yeah, I will say the take that element is not bad. I mean, there are so many opportunities to get those numbered cards, but it is mainly push your luck, and we don't tend to play those types of games. I do enjoy games that are heavily themed around the holidays, so that is sort of what made me interested in this anyway. I know that there are gamers out there who look for card games like this that they can bring out specifically themed around the holidays. So there you go. That is Toil and Troubles. All right, the next game is probably the most Halloween themed.
The darkest.
This is a very dark theme. Be warned. It's very grim. And it is, I think we've talked about this game before.
Maybe a long time
I feel like we have
ago.
a long time ago. But it is a game called Mystery Detective.
Yeah, maybe not so much a game, right?
I think it's a game.
It's more like
a
mystery
It's an
activity.
experience.
Yeah.
It's definitely an experience. You don't have to sit on the table to do this.
No.
In fact, we don't. There are several editions of this. In fact, this is volume 2.
Part 2, yeah.
So we actually haven't played this one. We played volume 1 and we couldn't find it.
Can't find it. I
For
don't know
some
where
reason.
I
So
put
we
it.
just pulled out the one that we
There it
haven't
is.
played yet. And I believe these games are translations of a German game called, I think it's called Black Stories.
Maybe.
And basically, the whole game is there are 100 cards in here, and each card has a very curious or a very strange
Peculiar scenario.
as to how someone met their fate.
Maybe perished,
Yes.
perhaps. Yeah.
But it's all very strange, like very convoluted, actually. You wouldn't expect people to end up in a situation like this. And so the front of the card will basically just show a little bit of the situation. Like you'll read a little bit of what is happening here. And on the back of the card is the full explanation. And so one player is playing as the clue giver of sorts. They know both sides. They know the answer. They know everything. The other players basically spend the game asking yes or no questions to this one player who knows all the information.
Right.
And that other player can basically just answer yes, no, or unrelated. You can say stuff like that.
Yeah.
But that's it. You just do that over and over and over again until you've figured out this story. This is actually something that we used to play as kids. I don't know if you ever did this.
Yeah, I've definitely heard those riddles like a man is lying in a field with a straw and a scarf or something like that.
A match.
Yeah, something
right?
like that.
Yes.
And it's like,
How did he what
perish
was-
here? Like,
yeah,
you know?
exactly.
And then that's all you get, And
Yeah.
so these are basically kind of plays on that. So
Yeah.
a bunch of different scenarios.
Yeah, 100 of them.
100 of them in the last one, and I think in this one. I don't know how many different volumes there are of this.
Of the original?
Yeah.
I don't know about the original.
Yeah, so we
know
have
very
volume
little.
1 and now we have volume 2. So I'm excited to crack into this one. Whenever your sisters get together, we like to kind of pull these out and just kind of one person goes around and just be the clue giver.
It's really fun because they're extremely difficult. These are more difficult, I would say, than the ones that we used to do. There were like 3 stories when I was in like middle school that all the kids would pass around, I guess. And it was that one.
There's one about goldfish.
Guy in the field. Yeah.
Yeah. Something
like that.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm drawing a blank, but you probably know what we're talking about. But some of these are going to be so convoluted that you might not come to the answer, but it's just fun doing
Eventually
it.
you're like, all right, just what is it? And then you're like, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Right. So,
But a lot of times it's just getting my brain working and asking those questions, and it's like,
yeah.
all right, I can feel that I'm kind of getting closer,
Trying to go as left field as possible, right?
Yeah. So
Think out of the box.
they're mystery detectives. You're supposed to act like a detective. Okay, if you were at the scene, like what are the the 5 or 10 questions that you really need to know. Like,
so that's about it. Naveen's right. It's not a board game.
Not a board game, but an activity that you can do at dinner or after dinner, or something that can kind of be simmering in everybody's kind of brains as you're at game night.
Yes.
You can just pose this kind of question, and then as you're setting up a game or something like that, then you can get right into it. So yeah, that is Mystery Detective. This one is volume 2. All right, this next game was sent to us by Thunderworks Games, and it is a card game called Goblin Vaults. This one, Monique, help me describe this one, because it's on the tip of my tongue.
I'm realizing this is it's not Halloween themed, but they're goblins.
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of goblins in Halloween lore, I guess,
if you were to say what holiday are there goblins?
Associated, not Christmas.
That'd be second, probably.
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving goblins, yeah. Anyway, in this game, you are trying to win.
How
do you play, Monique?
You're a goblin in prison. And so
that's right.
we are trying to gamble, I guess, with gears.
Gear tokens.
Yes. And it's technically a partial trick-taking game. Like, trick-taking seems to be an element in it. Well, actually not. There's card play where you're bidding. And so over the course of the game, what you're trying to do is you're trying to create your own vault of cards. And your vault can be up to 4 columns called chambers, and up to 3 tiers, which are rows, 3 rows in length.
So a total of technically space for 12 cards.
Yes, and you're playing 9 rounds. And so over the course of 9 rounds, you're going to be collecting 1 card per round. Each card has a number of different elements on it. There's a number associated with it. The card also belongs to a specific suit. A lot of the cards also have a faction symbol at the top. And at the top right-hand corner of the card, it tells you what row in your vault that card wants to be in.
The preference.
For you to score points.
Yeah.
And so the way that the game actually works is in the middle of the table, you'll have 3 cards face up. In addition, you'll have a warden card, which is above those 3 cards. But basically, in the round, each player is going to be going around placing a bid on one of those cards. When you place a bid, you play one of the cards from your hand to one of the 3 cards on the table. And if you play a card to one of the cards that already has a bid there, and your bid is lower than the highest bid, you also have to pay a gear. So that is something to consider. And then once everybody has played 1 card, then you basically resolve each card that's on the table, each of the 3 cards that were on the table.
Right.
The card will go to the highest bidder, and then the highest bidder's card that they used to bid now becomes a new card that's going to be offered on the table.
For the next round.
If there were multiple bids on a card, then everybody who lost places the card that they used to bid in their vault. So everybody gets something from what I remember. Now, like I was mentioning earlier, in addition to the 3 cards that are face up on the table, there's also that single warden card above it. Now, whenever you place cards into your vault, you cannot rearrange them unless you take what's called a warden action, which means when you bid with a card, if the faction symbol on that card that you played matches the faction symbol that's on the warden card, you can take a warden action, which essentially allows you to rearrange a card in your vault or discard a card from your hand to basically draw a new one from the deck. And that's essentially how the gameplay works. You pretty much do this for 9 rounds until the very end of the game when everybody has their own vault. And the way that you score them is the very thinky part. You'll score points for each card that is properly placed in the tier that it wanted to be, according to that symbol at the top right-hand corner.
Yeah, in the top right-hand corner, it's going to say it wants to be the first, second, or third card. So ideally, you want to have everything lined up perfectly.
Ideally. Each player will also score 2 points for each card that has their own faction symbol on it. And each game, you also play with 3 of these scoring cards. 2 of them have to do with suits, and one of them is the basic card that you play with every game. And they're going to reward you for certain criteria, such as each tier having each end of the row be the green suit, or all cards in one chamber are in ascending numerical order, stuff like that.
Yeah, and these are all public knowledge at the very beginning of the game, so everybody is competing. You're not going to be the only one to score these, but you're trying to score the most amount of points by hitting all these different milestones.
Right.
So if you didn't catch it, when Monique was talking about the auction portion of it, it's not one of those auction games where you have to constantly overbid the person before you.
Right.
So if there's a card maybe in the first slot that Monique bid something really high, I can play a lesser card as my bid. I do have to give up a gear, which is 1 point.
Yeah.
But knowing that I'm going to lose that particular column, I can actually get the card that I really want, which might be the one that I'm using for my bid, to get into my own personal vault.
Right.
And so that's where kind of the tactics and the strategy come. It's like, when do I want to actually bid on the card that's out there for
Yeah.
everybody to bid for?
Right.
And when can I just sneak this one card in and actually get it into my scoring zone?
Right. And so in this game, in my mind, there are two main aspects, right? There's the auction part, which now I'm realizing this is not a trick-taking game at all.
Not at all.
It's an
They
auction
have suits
game.
and numbers, that's why.
It's an auction
Yeah.
and like set collection / grid creation.
And,
I don't
public
know.
objectives. There you go.
So there are two main aspects, right? There's the auction part, which is that hand management portion, and then there's the creation of your vault. And one can be a bit tactical, but in order to do one, you have to plan out the vault. And so this game can be very, very thinky, right? For me, it caused me to have a bit of analysis paralysis because I'm trying to score several things at once. I want a card to be in the right position, but I also want it to be my faction symbol, but I also want it to fit in line with the 3 scoring criteria that are on the table.
And also have the top right be in the perfect little spot.
Yeah,
on your
it's
vault.
not it's not possible to do it all.
Yeah.
So you're just trying to do it the best, and that part for me is hard. The game plays up to 5 players, but I believe you only play with 3 cards face up, regardless of the player count.
Yeah, you're always bidding on 3 cards, no matter how many players are playing.
Yes, and so in my opinion, I really think it's a 4 or 5 player game.
Yeah.
Because we've played a 3-player game of it, and the auction part of it, which is the part that you really want to strategize properly
Yep.
with, it fell a bit flat because everybody had a card that they could take.
Yeah, at 3, it felt very like, that's fine, I'll just work with that.
Yeah.
And then you just kind of moved on to the next one. And that was happening quite a few times in our 3-player games.
Yeah.
But at 4 and 5 players, then there's only 3 cards out there. So
Mm-hmm.
somebody is going to get the card that they had to bid, their the underbid.
Yeah.
And then you also are going to have more gears kind of changing hands because of because of people underbidding sometimes.
Right, that's true. Yeah, so the tension was just not there in lower player counts, I guess, is the point. Other than that, I really liked the scoring part of the game. I think that is it felt pretty unique, and I really enjoyed having my brain having to juggle all of these different scoring conditions.
Yeah, the couple times that we played, like I didn't have that kind of AP for some reason. I was just like, well, this is the obvious
Wow, must be nice.
Well, I'm just saying, like if these are the cards out there,
Yeah.
and I really like that card, it's like, okay, I'm gonna make sure I get that card with these. If I have
Yeah.
a high value card, I'm gonna use it to bid on this particular one.
Mm-hmm.
Or if it's like, well, these 2 cards have the exact same value,
Mm-hmm.
but I belong to that faction, so I'm clearly in a gun for that one because that is my faction. I get an extra couple points
Mm-hmm.
for taking that. So I don't know. For me, I didn't feel that bogged down with this particular game, but
Yeah. I guess for me, this happens to me in every game that has several things that you're trying to consider.
Yeah.
I overthink it and I try to find the perfect solutions when it's just like pick one thing or pick the highest scoring condition and hit that really hard.
Yeah.
Is what I really should be doing, but I don't. And so that is sort of my downfall.
Yeah. Also, there is an element of looking at least at the halfway point of the game. It's like, oh, I know that you have a bunch of stuff in that vault, and I know you're going for that public objective with it. So if I see that there's a card there that you're bidding on, and I'm like, I can afford to take this card out of circulation, I'm going to outbid you on that. So there's a little bit of that going around. So I was definitely paying attention to what other people had on the table.
So anyway, for me, in the end, I found the game to be very interesting, just not at fewer than 4 players.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think I would want to play it again at 3 or less. 4 and 5, no problem. But it's not the most interesting game for me. I am willing to play it, but it's not one that I am calling to or feeling like I need to get this back to the table.
And that is Goblin Vaults. All right, the last game that we're going to be talking about today comes to us from Space Cowboys.
Yes.
This is a 1 to 4 player game called Spellbook.
Spellbook.
Yeah,
Spooky
this
for
is
the
a little bit
holidays.
spooky. It's about making spells, casting spells. There's a fantasy theme to it.
Yeah.
But it's not super thematic,
No.
I suppose, right? There are 7 different spells that the game comes with, and they are color coded. Each type of spell, by the way, has 3 different types that you can choose from, and they have different effects depending on which one you choose.
So it's different combinations every time you play.
Right. And so the way that setup works is one player will either randomly choose one spell from each category, or you can agree on it. But either way, every player is going to have the same set of 7 spells when you play the game. In addition, players also have their own familiars board that you're trying to fill to score points by the end of the game. There's also an altar, which is going to hold the materia, which are these different elements that you're going to be using to cast these spells.
Yeah.
The way that the game works is on your turn, you're going to be taking up to 3 actions. Your turn has a morning, midday, and an evening phase, and you have a different type of action depending on the phase. At the start of the game, before you've been able to cast any spells, your morning phase is basically going to consist of you taking materia. You can either take 1 materia from the altar, so you're basically choosing from those that are face-up available.
On display, basically.
Or you can take 2 from the bag. So you get more materia, but you don't get to choose the color.
Yep.
Your base midday action is going to allow you to take 1 of the materia that are in your possession and place it on the lowest available space on your familiar board. That mechanic is very simple. At the end of the game, the lowest showing number is how many points you get from it. So you really want to just fill it all up so that you can score the max 18. And then your evening phase is where you cast spells. So on each of the 7 spells, it tells you how many of these materia tokens you need to turn in order to cast it. There are 3 strengths to each spell, and each strength requires a different amount of that materia color. And you can only cast each spell once during the entire game. So you really have to decide what strength you are interested in casting, I guess.
Each category of spell can only be cast once. So in like the blue one, even though there's 3 levels, if you cast the first level, you can never go back and then in the future cast level 2 or level 3.
Right. And when you cast these spells, you're turning in a certain amount of the same materia color.
Yep.
There is another rule, though, where you can turn in up to 3.
3 of the... So these mana or materia, they have both color as well as symbol on them. So you can turn in 3 of the same symbol. They might be from varying different colors to represent any one color that you're missing.
Yes.
It's like a wild.
Right. And once cast, these spells will do a variety of different things. Some of them score you endgame points, and some of them provide you with a new type of action that you can take, and it'll tell you when during your turn you can take
Right,
it.
because at the beginning of the game, your like morning action is either take 2 from the bag or take 1 from the display. But maybe you have now unlocked a spell that gives you an alternate action that you can take in the morning. Same thing with the midday as well as the evening.
Right. Maybe your morning action will allow you to take 2 of a specific type of rune symbol from the altar.
Or there might be an ongoing effect where anytime you collect from the bag this particular symbol, you get an additional XYZ, whatever it may be.
So there's a bit of engine building. The
Yeah.
spells are going to be a bit of engine building in the game. You'll also be using some of them to combo during your turn. And in the end, the spells are just making you more efficient with your day because they are better versions of the base morning, midday, and evening phase. And that's about it. That's the entire game. You pretty much continue taking these turns until either somebody has cast all 7 of their spells or completely filled their familiars board. And then you just add up all the points that are shown on your spells as well as on your board.
Yep, it's pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple. It is a quick teach. I mean,
what I just explained is the entire game.
Yeah, especially it's even faster when all the materials are just like laid out in front of you, and like that is the spell you're trying to go for. You need to turn this in for that.
Right.
Phil Walker Harding is the designer of this, and I really enjoy most of his games.
Yeah.
This particular one, I'm not a big fan of, unfortunately.
It fell a little flat for you?
It did, yeah. The opening move of take 1 of those materia or take 2 random from the bag.
Yeah.
Honestly, like at the very beginning of the game, it's like, well, 2's better than 1. And either way, whatever these are, I'll work with them.
Yeah,
you know?
we rarely took 1 from the altar. We were pretty much taking 2 from the bag because I think it's because of that rule of you being able to turn in 3. There's a lot of flexibility in the game. And then as soon as you start casting spells, it provides you with even more flexibility. It can be a very quick playing game because of that.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you start casting those spells, things start to snowball.
They do. And there can be a runaway leader in this. If somebody else's engine has grown bigger because of their random pull from the bag and they were able to get the spells out and you're like,
that's true.
Well, what's out on the altar is not good for me, so I might as well go into the bag. And then you pull out what's already on the altar from the bag, and you're like, well, I guess I got 2 of what was on the altar,
that is
so
true.
I guess that's fine.
Especially in a 2-player game.
Yeah.
Our 2-player games of it, there was one in particular that was particularly egregious where I definitely had a runaway leader problem because one of the spells was absolutely more useful than the others, especially in the early game.
Yeah.
And I happened to draw several of the same color, and then I was able to unlock that spell, which basically, whenever I draw a specific color, I think. It allowed me to take something from the altar, and I was just doing that so many times
Yeah.
and just having so many more materia in my supply
Yeah,
than
it,
you.
it would be like, well, I'm getting you're getting like 3-to-1 benefit on all the engine that's going. So it
Yeah.
just felt like I was like, I can't really catch up anymore.
Yeah, there was no way to get. Now, granted,
So-
when I was doing that, I felt like I was making very strategic decisions because on the spells, it has you leave one of your materia on there because a lot of the spells have to do with whatever the rune is on the materia that you left on the card.
Right.
So if it's a specific symbol that you place there, then that is the type of materia that you can take
You're
from the
hunting
altar
for, yeah.
that you're hunting for. And I felt like in that game, that specific gameplay, I would definitely was leaving things that would help me, I guess, snowball later.
Especially if you know like, oh, what's out there on the board, I'm going to put Naveen in conflict. He can either unnecessarily strip off that one symbol there,
Yeah.
or he can go hunting in the bag to
For
really
himself.
find the thing that he needs.
Right.
And I found myself constantly in this like, if I leave that symbol out there for you, it's bad. It's even worse for me. So I guess I'm gonna have to take this one red swirly symbol, but it doesn't do anything for me because I've already scored the red. I've already scored the
you've cast
red
that
spell. So it's like, oh gosh.
Yeah, and every time I had my turn, any materia that I had in front of me that wasn't really helpful, I would just toss into my familiars. So I was both
Yes.
casting spells and filling my familiars board.
Yeah.
So that was a bit rough. But granted, not every game is going to have that combination. I think that is the part that's interesting about this game is the fact that there are 3 copies of every spell. And each copy of the spell works differently. So every time you play the game, you can play with a different combination of them. And you may not have that issue. Maybe that was just that specific
Isolated,
situation, isolated experience. But I think still in the end, the goal of casting all of your spells as the end game condition was still a little bit lackluster, I guess.
Yeah, but aside from the luck factor of some of this game, I do find it interesting that there are different combinations of spells. So there's always going to be a different kind of layout. And so planning out and seeing at the very beginning of the game what are the
order
possible combinations
you're
of
gonna cast your
what
spells.
orders. That part is interesting to me. I just wish that getting to that engine building was not so luck dependent, I guess.
And the art is really beautiful, by the way. So there you go. That is Spellbook.
Yep.
And that about wraps the 4 games that we wanted to talk about today. Please, again, let us know what you are playing. There are a lot of other games that I wish we could try that we haven't played before.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a ton.
Arkham Horror is another one that a lot of people love to play around
Have
this
we
time.
played Arkham Horror?
We haven't played Arkham Horror or Eldritch Horror,
What
which I
have
think
we played
have
before?
similarities.
That has an app that's 2nd edition, and we played it with Michael. Michael on the channel, we've played it at his house.
Mansions of Madness.
Mansions of Madness.
Second
There you go.
edition.
Yeah.
I liked that game.
You liked it. I wasn't a big fan of it just because it took a little while, but
Naveen
for the
wasn't a
holidays,
fan because you have to read.
a lot of passages.
You have to read the app.
Love the voice actors.
It's a
love
cool
voice
cool
actors.
game. It is app dependent,
It is.
but it's interesting because it's a mansion and there's so many different scenarios and it's the monster fighting.
The
too. I
fact
don't
the
think
fact that
you're
it is
huge on that.
co-op, I am
Yeah.
willing to go back and try it again. It has been a long time since I played that game. I'm willing to play it again.
Betrayal,
Betrayal House on the Hill.
House of
yeah.
Hell. We haven't played that
In a
ever
while.
since the last one that we tried, which was the 3rd edition, I believe.
3rd edition, yeah.
Yeah, I think we've semi moved on from that one.
Yeah.
We've also played Fury of Dracula.
Oh, yeah.
3rd edition.
Yeah,
3rd
that's-
edition is it?
Yes, that is a hidden role, or
Hidden-
not a hidden role. One person is playing as Dracula,
Yeah.
and they are going underground as a hidden movement game.
There you go.
And everybody
That's
else
it.
is trying to work to figure out and suss out, kind of where Dracula is. And
Yeah,
that is a
it's a cool
challenging
game.
game. That
It's
is a
hard.
good game. Yeah.
There's Ghost Stories that I hear is pretty difficult. Blood on the Clock Tower
Mm.
for social deduction. And if there was one game that I could choose to play this season that we don't own, it would be My Father's Work.
Oh yeah, heard good things about that.
Yeah, long game, I hear, but I hear really, really good things about it. I think it's about a mad scientist. Like
think
players
so,
are
yeah.
mad scientists. Don't know much about it, but hopefully one day we get to play it.
Well, anyway, thank you all so much for watching the video. We hope you all have a fantastic and happy and safe Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
If you'd like to see more videos like this, of course, in the future, please consider subscribing.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Happy Halloween, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.